This is exactly what Bruins fans wanted to hear, as we have such a good update regarding Hampus Lindholm and what seems like the first in about a year. We're going to be breaking that down, as well as going over another target reported in multiple trades where the Boston Bruins are looking for the remainder of the offseason. We're going to be breaking it all down here in this video. Before we do jump into all of this news here today, though, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the sub button. We know that just over 60% of you guys watching right now have not done so already, and we have a lot of Bruins news coming out right now after all of these reports over the last few days detailing the Bruins being in multiple talks with multiple players, and we're going to be covering that all throughout this offseason as what remains, and we are about 60 days away from puck drop for the Boston Bruins, so be sure to hit the sub button. We're going to have all your updates here as it happens, but we need to get straight into this here. First, starting off with Hampus Lindholm. I want to talk about him because, as I've mentioned, it feels like we haven't spoken about Hampus Lindholm any positive direction in such a long time. And this came from Kevin Paul DuPont and saying, an enjoyable phone chat this week with Hampus Lindholm for his Sunday hockey notes. Bruins veteran defenseman says his fractured kneecap is fully healed and he is 100% to go for September 17th start of camp. Hopes to be with the Three Crowns, which is Sweden for those who don't know, in the Olympics and the 26 games. So this is a very positive update for Hampus Lindholm to start off, the beginning, I'll say, of the next season. I feel like right now where we are, the beginning of August, kind of midway through August, this is when I start to consider things preparing for next season, more so than the end of last. And the fact that this is the first update we have really on Hampus Lindholm in such a long time, saying that he is now 100% ready to go, and adding on top that he is really wanting to play for this team Sweden in the Olympics is, almost the confirmation that he is 100% ready to go if he didn't already say it. But going into this season, of course, we knew that the defense really needed to stay healthy. I mean, that was really what I don't want to necessarily say tore apart the team last year, but there's a major kind of gap in where everybody was wondering where this team went such downhill, and it was really after the loss of Hampus Lindholm due to injury, ultimately Charlie McAvoy going down with injury, and then swapping around the defense what it feels like every game for a little bit on the earlier side of the season before kind of hammering down on one type of thing. But going back to Hampus Lindholm, playing 17 games last year, he was on 7 points. It was on a pretty good pace, and I don't want to necessarily say a career high, but his 53 in Boston in 2022-23 would have been pretty close to that pace. And what we saw from him last year at the beginning of the season, at least, was quite promising. And ultimately, after that, it really seems to be, after the injury, of course, seems to see the kind of momentum, the wind taken out of the sails of the Boston Bruins team. And, I don't want to talk too much about that because we know what happened. We know exactly what happened. And, we're kind of put that in the back of our mind and move on to next season with everything going on. But at Hampus Lindholm's price, there was many reports, the kind of rumors coming out about him. Would he be traded and whatnot? And I really didn't entertain any of those because I didn't like the idea. But going into his year 4, technically 5 years left now on his contract at 6.5, the Bruins are going to need him to take up a lot more from what he did last year. And of course, 17 games, he couldn't have really done much. But going into this year now, going to be back on a line with Charlie McAvoy on line 1 and having a kind of revamped defense quite a bit here after what we saw in the offseason, the trade deadline last year. Hampus Lindholm is not just going to be, the line 1 left defenseman. He's going to be kind of a core piece and a leader on this defense. So coming into what we were looking at and everything, and where this Bruins team is currently standing on the defensive side of the puck, and adding Mason Lohrei on this new contract, or not really say adding, of course, Hampus Lindholm's played with him for a while, but Henry Jokiharju, Andrew Peeke, this is a very good defense. I'm willing to say that. The way that we saw Zadorov play with Jokiharju last year, that was a very, very good combination for the later half of the season. And Zadorov, who was, a plus 30 on the year, he's shown promise. And, if he played his own game and, he was definitely playing out of a role that he was supposed to last year, taking over that line 1 for quite a bit of the season with Lindholm out. Now on the second line, where we think and we thought he would be originally, this is going to be a really good defense with everybody playing the role, and hopefully, of course, everybody stays healthy and, continues to play the way they have been, because if, everybody's healthy here on this line, everybody's playing with the right, matchup and whatnot, this is going to be one of the best defense in the league, and, I'm willing to say it. The team might not be the best, but this defense is going to be showing quite a bit of promise early on in the season, and as well going into, hopefully be the playoffs near the end of the season. So I want to know what you guys think about that as well, because, of course, a very positive update from Kevin Paul DuPont about Hampus Lindholm. The fact that now he's kind of 100%, you're saying he's 100%. We haven't heard anything up until this point that I think the last thing we heard was Joe Sacco saying that, he's still going to be out a while. And, of course, that was really what we kind of knew. That's what we kind of agreed with, kind of came down to it saying we won't see him for the remainder of the year. But now that, the first update that we have is 100%, I think is probably the best thing that we could have gotten here at this point in the offseason. It gives him enough time to get back up to his training and be ready for training camp and ultimately ready for the beginning of the regular season as well. So I think this is actually perfect time for him to be able to 100% get ready for not just the Bruins season, but also the Olympics in February. So let me know what you think about that. But we do need to move on to another report, as I mentioned, kind of going the same topics as yesterday, of another player reportedly being in conversation with not just the Bruins, but the Bruins being in talks with other teams. And this one, in fact, is John Beecher. And this is what they have right here from, I believe this is Causeway Crowd, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they said this feels like a make-or-break season for John Beecher with the Bruins, re-signed for a 900K cap hit for 1 year. But Sweeney also brought in more bottom six players through free agency, and there is now a logjam in the bottom six, and is not going to be enough room for everybody else. And this is something that we've spoken about quite a bit here, is the bottom six and what is going to be going on in that kind of realm. Because when we're looking at this bottom six team right now and kind of going over it, this is what we're currently looking at on Puckpedia. And of course, there are so many other younger players, Fabian Lysell, Georgi Merkulov, that will be likely supposed to be in this lineup at some point. And I think that this season, as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of trades revolving around bottom six guys. Taking out, I guess, I would say Matt Poitras and Tanner Jeannot here. Really, nobody else is safe, I don't think. And coming into this, looking at where you see this lineup built, how many they sign, there are going to be moves made. And John Beecher really does seem like the one here now, because as you saw here, it really does seem like a make or break. And I do expect that if John Beecher does not, begin the season well, start the season well, continue this season well, he will be shipped out by this Bruins team pretty quickly. And the Bruins are going to be just trying to use that bottom six, come the trade deadline and throughout the rest of the season to be able to get more picks, get more depth, get more prospects in any sort of trade. And as we saw last year, Don Sweeney knows what he's doing when it comes to trading some of these potential veteran middle six, bottom six players. And Charlie Coyle, we saw what return we got there. Casey Mittelstadt, who likely will be flipped at some point, a pick, and William Zeller. And going into all of the kind of assets they got in return throughout this entire deadline, Fraser Minton being one for Brandon Carlo alone, that is a very good deal, and, not even including the pick. So I think that Don Sweeney's kind of on that mindset of doing this one more time, throughout the year, doing it one more before they actually get back into a playoff spot, because I think that, personally, they will be in a playoff spot this year, but a lot of people don't think they will, and I think that the Don Sweeney and the Bruins will be kind of, not necessarily okay with it, but they're not expecting to. But with this lineup, the way that it looks, I think it could be easily a playoff team. And I did want to pull up John Beecher's stats as well, because, taking a look at him, it's only been 2 seasons. You expect a lot from a guy. He is 24 years old, so it's not like he started when he was 18, but with Providence as well, that's not necessarily where he's shown some points. He's more of a defensive, pretty, I shouldn't say fully a defensive forward, but he's a pretty solid defensive centerman, great on the faceoff. And the way that, they kind of thought he was going to be that 30th overall pick, it really didn't come to fruition here on this team. But I do think that when you're coming into this season, I think that John Beecher is going to know that this is more so his kind of last opportunity, more so his last kind of tryout, I guess you could say, tryout with this Boston Bruins team heading into the season before he is potentially shipped out with many other potential forwards here. And, as I mentioned, Sean Crowley they acquired, he could be a deadline flip. I don't really think so. Mark Kaslick, they signed him for a reason. I love Mark Kaslick. Please don't trade him, Don Sweeney, if you're watching this for some odd reason. But a lot of other players that here, I think, could be very big options. And even if they do decide to keep these players here that are on the roster now and trade some of the prospects, whatever they can get more value from, I think there's a lot of options that they're going to be going through the bottom six as we get closer to the trade deadline. But right now, I think the Bruins are kind of got their mind set on what they want to start the season with multiple changes coming throughout. So let me know what you think about all the news here in this video, going from John Beecher as well as the Hampus Lindholm return. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about John Beecher, because it is, I'll fully admit it is a make or break season now at this point for him. But, it's only a matter of time until we figure it out. But as like I said, that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.